Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
All right, so today we're diving deep into the Civil War and Reconstruction.
Oh, yeah, this is a big one.
It is, and we're going to go beyond just the dates and battles.
Right.
We really want to understand how America grappled with some huge ideas.
Yeah, like freedom.
Exactly. Freedom, citizenship, equality.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what's crazy?
What's that?
These struggles, they still echo today, you know?
Absolutely. They're woven into the fabric of who we are as a nation.
So to really get this, we've got to start with that tension between the North and South.
Right, that's the heart of it,
Over slavery.
of course.
And it wasn't just about the economics of it all, right?
Oh, no, it goes way deeper than that.
I mean, there were these deep racial and social hierarchies in play.
Absolutely, it's about power.
Yeah.
Who has it, who wants it, who gets to define what it means to be American.
And the country tried to hold it together with all these compromises, right?
Yeah, like putting Band-Aids on a gaping wound.
Exactly, like the Missouri Compromise.
Trying to draw a line in the sand.
Right, about where slavery could and couldn't exist.
And then there's the Compromise of 1850.
Oh, with that crazy Fugitive Slave Act.
Yeah, that was a tough one, imagine.
Oh, I know.
Escaping to freedom, only to be hunted down
And dragged back.
to the very place you risked your life to escape.
It's just adding fuel to the fire.
It was, definitely.
And then things really boil over with bleeding Kansas,
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's when things got real.
It wasn't just talk anymore.
Nope, this was about the very soul of the nation.
So the Kansas-Nebraska Act basically said, let's vote on slavery in these new territories.
Sounds democratic in theory, right?
Right.
But it led to chaos.
Both sides just flooded Kansas and it turned violent.
Oh, absolutely. It was a preview of the horrors to come.
So enter Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, yeah.
I always thought of him as like the ultimate abolitionist.
It's more complicated than that.
More nuanced.
Way more, yeah.
So what was his deal?
Well, at first his priority was preserving the Union.
Okay.
Even if it meant accepting slavery in some places.
So keeping the country together was the main goal.
Exactly.
And then the war happened and things changed.
As the war dragged on, Lincoln realized ending slavery was crucial to actually saving the Union.
So the Emancipation Proclamation wasn't just this moral victory
It was a strategic move, too.
to weaken the Confederacy.
Absolutely.
It's like he's saying, okay, this is about freedom now, and we're going all in.
Yeah, and speaking of going all in,
Yeah.
we can't forget about those 180,000 black soldiers who fought for the Union.
That's a huge number.
It is monumental. These men fought for a country that had denied them basic human rights.
And they did it with such courage.
It's incredible. Their service challenged this whole idea of black inferiority that was used to justify slavery.
It totally changes how we view the war.
It reframes the whole narrative.
Okay, so the North wins, slavery is abolished, we enter this period of Reconstruction.
Right, but it wasn't just about picking up the pieces.
There was more to it.
It was a radical attempt to rebuild the South with racial equality at its core.
That's a big goal. That's huge.
It was a monumental task.
Think about it. People who were enslaved just a few years ago are now citizens with rights.
It's a complete transformation of the social and political landscape.
And that's where the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments come in.
Huge steps forward.
Ending slavery
Granting citizenship.
and equal protection under the law.
And guaranteeing the right to vote regardless of race.
But I'm guessing it wasn't smooth sailing.
You guessed right, turning those rights into reality. It's
Yeah.
a whole other battle.
The South wasn't giving up easily.
Not at all. And even historians debate how Reconstruction played out.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You've got traditionalists who see it as a failed experiment.
Okay.
Revisionists who argue it was a time of remarkable progress despite the obstacles.
Interesting.
And then the post-revisionists who kind of try to find a middle ground.
So many different interpretations.
That's the thing about history. It's not just about the facts. It's about how we interpret them.
And then there's critical race theory, right?
It-
Which examines how systemic racism has shaped, well, everything.
It's all connected. And speaking of systemic issues,
Yeah.
we can't forget about that fierce resistance Black Americans faced during Reconstruction.
Like the Black Codes.
Oh, yeah. Those are basically trying to recreate slavery under a different name.
It's like they were trying to undo everything.
In a way, they were.
And then there's the rise of the Ku Klux Klan,
A terrifying chapter.
using violence and terror to keep Black communities from exercising their rights.
Lynchings, beatings, burning homes. It's a horrific attempt to maintain white supremacy.
It's heartbreaking, but those voices deserve to be heard.
Absolutely.
Are there any firsthand accounts from that time that really struck you?
Oh, definitely. Frederick Douglass, who escaped slavery himself,
Powerful story.
wrote and spoke so powerfully about the hope and the heartbreak of Reconstruction.
I can imagine.
He even warned that the promises made were but a promise to the ear to be broken to the heart.
Oh, wow. So he saw it coming.
He saw the potential for those unfulfilled promises.
It's tough.
And then there's Harriet Jacobs.
Oh, right. She wrote Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl.
A powerful book.
Reading their words just makes it all so real, so vivid.
Absolutely. You connect with their hope, their courage.
And the immense challenges they face.
It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
Okay, so we have to talk about the Compromise of 1877.
The deal that essentially shut down Reconstruction.
What happened there?
Well, imagine this. Federal troops who were protecting Black communities and enforcing those Reconstruction laws,
Yeah.
they're pulled out of the South.
Really?
It's a political compromise that prioritized expediency over the rights of Black Americans.
So the South was basically free to reimpose its will.
Essentially, yes.
It's like a huge step back after all those hard-won gains.
It was a crushing blow instead of moving toward equality.
Yeah.
The South began enacting Jim Crow laws.
Oh, right. That system of legal segregation and discrimination.
That would cast a long shadow over America.
For generations.
Yes, for generations to come.
This deep dive has been quite a roller coaster ride.
It has, hasn't it?
From the roots of the Civil War to the complexities of Reconstruction.
So much happened in such a short period.
And it's clear this period left a legacy of both progress and unfinished business.
That's the thing about history, it's always unfolding.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that the fight for equality didn't end with the abolition of slavery.
Or even the civil rights movement.
It's a fight that continues to this day.
Absolutely, and we'll explore that more in part 2 of our deep dive.
We'll connect the dots between Reconstruction and that ongoing struggle for racial justice in America.
It's a conversation you won't want to miss.
Definitely not, so stay tuned.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. We were talking about how the Compromise of 1877 basically shut down Reconstruction.
Yeah, like pulling the rug out from under those promises of equality.
And leaving Black communities so vulnerable.
So let's fast forward a bit. What happens after those federal troops leave the South?
Well, imagine you're trying to build a society based on freedom and equality, and suddenly that support system is gone.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And that's pretty much what happened. The South went back to its old ways.
Like with those Jim Crow laws?
Exactly. That system of segregation and discrimination.
It was everywhere, right?
Everywhere. Separate schools, separate restrooms, even separate water fountains.
Constant reminders of their supposed inferiority.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just about separating people. It was about controlling them.
Keeping them in a subordinate position.
Socially and economically.
What about voting rights? I mean, that was guaranteed by the 15th Amendment, right?
You'd think so, but Southern states found ways around it.
Really? How?
Poll taxes, literacy tests that were rigged against Black voters,
It's unbelievable.
and even violence and intimidation at the polls.
It's like they were trying to erase all the progress made during Reconstruction.
In a way, they were.
It's mind-boggling that this was happening in America, you know?
It's a dark chapter in our history.
Did anyone speak up against this injustice?
Of course, Black Americans never stopped fighting for their rights.
How did they do that?
They organized, they protested, they built their own institutions.
Keeping that hope alive.
Absolutely. People like Ida B. Wells, a journalist who exposed the horrors of lynching.
Risking her own life to bring that to light.
And then you have Booker T. Washington, who focused on economic self-reliance for Black communities.
Believing that economic power could lead to social and political progress?
Right. And then there's W.E.B. Du Bois, who demanded full civil rights and equality.
Different approaches to the same problem.
And they all played a role in shaping the movement for equality.
It's amazing how these leaders navigated such a complex and dangerous landscape.
Their courage is truly inspiring.
They really lay the groundwork for the civil rights movement.
They showed that the fight was far from over.
And that brings us to this question. How did this period, with all its triumphs and tragedies, shape the America we live in today?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
We can draw a direct line from the Civil War and Reconstruction to the issues we still grapple with today.
Think about it. Those tactics used to suppress Black voters during Jim Crow.
Like voter ID law?
And gerrymandering, those are still being debated today.
So that fight for equal access to the ballot box is directly connected to Reconstruction.
Absolutely. That fight's not over yet.
And what about other areas where we see racial inequality, like in education, housing, criminal justice?
Those are connected too, those systemic disparities we see today.
They're rooted in centuries of discrimination and segregation.
going all the way back to slavery and reinforced during Jim Crow.
It's like the past is still casting a long shadow over our present.
It's a powerful image, that long shadow of history,
Makes you realize how important it is to understand this period.
to really grasp the roots of the problems we face today.
We've been focusing on Black Americans and their fight for equality. But this was a time of upheaval for many groups.
You're right, we can't look at history in isolation.
It's all interconnected, those ideas about freedom and equality.
Yeah, they didn't just apply to Black Americans.
They resonated with other groups who were also struggling with issues of identity and belonging.
Think about women's suffrage, the movement for women's right to vote.
That was gaining momentum during this time,
Women were challenging traditional roles,
demanding a voice in the political process.
and immigrants facing discrimination or also fighting for their place.
It's like everyone was trying to figure out where they fit in this new America,
This era was like a breeding ground for social movements,
a time when new ideas about freedom and equality were forged.
a time of incredible ferment with both progress and backlash,
And while these movements often intersected,
and supported each other
they also had their own unique challenges.
in complexities.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from battlefields to courtrooms.
It's been a whirlwind tour of history.
What are some key takeaways you hope listeners will walk away with?
I think the biggest one is that history isn't just a bunch of dusty old stories.
He's alive.
It shapes our present and our future.
And that fight for equality, it's a marathon.
Not a sprint.
There will be setbacks,
Times when you feel like giving up,
but we can't.
we have to keep pushing forward.
Like Frederick Douglass said, that promise of Reconstruction being broken to the heart,
And yet people kept going,
kept fighting for a better future.
building on the work of those who came before them,
Each generation picking up that torch.
carrying it forward.
And it's not always about grand gestures.
And big changes.
Sometimes it's those everyday acts of courage
Those small moments of resistance.
that add up to something bigger.
You got it. Speaking up when you see injustice.
Checking your own biases.
Standing with those who are marginalized.
Creating a society that's more inclusive.
More equitable, one step at a time.
Even those small steps, they matter.
They all matter.
You know, it's amazing how those echoes from the Civil War and Reconstruction are still with us today.
It's true. They really shaped our world in so many ways. It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah, and we talk about how this period impacted women immigrants.
Right. Their stories are all part of this bigger picture, this fight for justice.
Exactly, and it's even clearer today, right? Think about the movements for racial justice, gender equality, LGBTQ plus rights.
They're all pushing for that same goal, human dignity.
For everyone to be seen and heard.
Yeah, they all inform each other, inspire each other.
It's like this giant tapestry, right?
Yeah.
All these threads woven together, this complex picture of what it means to be American.
I like that, a tapestry. Yeah, understanding those connections helps us see what these struggles have in common.
How we need to stand together.
Be allies for one another.
So where do we go from here? What lessons can we take from this period of history to deal with the challenges we face now?
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons is persistence. This fight for equality. It's a marathon.
Not a sprint.
Exactly. There will be setbacks.
Times when you feel like giving up.
But we have to keep pushing forward.
It's like what Frederick Douglass said about that promise of Reconstruction being broken to the heart.
Yeah, but even with that heartbreak, people kept going.
Kept fighting for a better future.
And they built on the work of those who came before them.
Each generation passing the torch.
Exactly. And it's not always about those grand gestures, those big sweeping changes.
Sometimes it's the small stuff, right?
It is those everyday acts of courage. Those little moments of resistance.
That add up to something much bigger.
Yeah, like speaking up when you see injustice.
Checking your own biases.
Standing with those who are marginalized.
Creating a society that's more inclusive.
More equitable, one step at a time.
And those steps, even if they seem small.
They all matter.
We've covered so much in this deep dive. It's been quite a journey from the Civil War to social justice in the 21st century.
And we've just scratched the surface.
But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
If you could go back in time, talk to the people who lived through this era,
Oh, wow.
what would you ask them? What would you want to learn from their experiences?
That's a great question. I think I'd ask them about their hopes for the future.
Their hopes
What did they imagine for themselves, for their children, for the nation?
and how they held onto that hope through so much hardship.
I bet their answers would surprise us, maybe even inspire us.
Challenge us to think differently about our own role in creating a better world.
Absolutely. It's a journey we're all on together.
That's a powerful thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Civil War and Reconstruction.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned something new and gained a deeper understanding of this crucial time in American history.
And how it's still shaping our world today.
Remember, the past isn't just a bunch of dates and events. It's a living story that continues to shape our present and our future.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep fighting for a better tomorrow.
And until next time, keep diving deep.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.